All right, let's dive deep. We're going to shrink down and explore one of the most incredible, most powerful little machines in the entire universe. It's basically a microscopic assembly line running inside every single one of your cells. And it is the reason you have energy to do, well, anything at all. Let's get into the electron transport chain.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. You eat lunch, and somehow that food gives you the juice to walk around, to think, even to just listen to me right now. It's kind of wild, right? Well, the secret is all about how our cells squeeze every last drop of energy from our food. And it all happens in this tiny little factory we're about to tour. Okay, before we go any further, you have to meet the absolute star of the show, ATP. The easiest way to think about ATP is like cash for your cells. If a muscle wants to contract or a brain cell wants to send a signal, it has to spend some ATP. The entire point of this whole electron transport chain thing is to make a ton of this stuff. It's the whole reason it exists. So if ATP is the money, how do we actually earn it? Well, it all starts with the molecules that carry the value from your food. Think of them like armored trucks heading to the bank. Meet our energy shuttles, NADH and FADH₂. Now, you might see them called reducing equivalents, which is just a super technical way of saying they are really, really good at holding on to high-energy electrons. See, after your body breaks down food, these guys swoop in, grab those energetic electrons, they're basically like tiny, fully charged batteries, and they bring them right to the start of our assembly line. Now, a factory this important needs the perfect spot to set up shop. And, evolution has placed this one in a very, very strategic location inside our cells. It all goes down right here on this inner folded up membrane of the mitochondria. And this location is no accident, folks. The mitochondria is also where other big energy processes happen, like the citric acid cycle, which is constantly churning out the NADH and FADH₂ fuel. So the factory is built right next to the fuel depot. You can't get more efficient than that. An assembly line is nothing without its workers, right? So let's meet the key players that actually make up this incredible electron transport chain. So the main line is built from 4 massive protein complexes. And scientists kept it simple. They're just named complex I, I3, and I4. Zipping electrons between them, you have 2 mobile carriers. Think of them as little delivery drones named Q and cytochrome C. And all of this work, all of it, builds up to the grand finale with this mind-blowing machine called ATP synthase. But wait, if we zoom in even closer, we find these hidden helpers. Tucked away inside those giant proteins are these little things called cofactors, stuff like iron-sulfur clusters and heme groups. You can think of them as the actual hands on the assembly line. They're the ones that physically grab an electron and pass it to the next station. Seriously, without them, the whole system would just grind to a halt. Okay, the scene is set. The players are all in position. It is time for the main event, a high-stakes, high-energy relay race for electrons. So here's the game plan in a nutshell. Our charged-up molecules NADH and FADH₂ show up and drop off their precious cargo, these high-energy electrons. Those electrons then get passed down the line, from one complex to the next, like a baton in a relay race, until they finally cross the finish line over at complex 4. Let's look a little closer. Okay, now here's a super important detail. There are 2 different starting gates. Electrons that come from NADH jump in at complex I, but the ones from FADH₂, they enter at complex 2. And this makes a huge difference. Why? Because complex I uses that electron's energy to pump protons across the membrane, but complex 2 doesn't. So electrons starting at gate 1 end up generating a lot more power. And this really gets to the core of it all. As that high-energy electron gets handed off again and again, it moves to a lower and lower energy state. But all that energy it releases isn't just lost as heat. No way. The cell is way too smart for that. It captures that energy to do work. And what's the work? Pumping protons, those little H+ ions, from one side of the membrane to the other. And check this out. This shows you exactly where that work gets done. When an electron passes through complex 1, boom, 4 protons get pumped. Then when it gets to complex 3, another 4 protons. And finally, at complex 4, it pushes 2 more across. So for every single electron that starts at complex 1, a whopping 10 protons get pumped across that membrane. So what happens at the end of the race? The electron is tired.
It's low on energy, and it needs a final resting place. And that final resting place is oxygen. Oxygen is what we call the terminal electron acceptor. It just graciously takes those spent electrons, grabs a couple of protons, and turns into water. This is the fundamental reason you and I have to breathe oxygen every single second of our lives, to keep this assembly line from getting backed up. Okay, we've done all this hard work. We've been pumping all these protons, building up this incredible store of potential energy. Now it is time for the payoff. It's time to cash in and make some actual ATP. So all those protons we pumped are now just crammed into this tiny space between the two mitochondrial membranes, and they are desperate to get back to where it's less crowded. This whole situation creates this powerful electrochemical gradient, which is just pure potential energy. It's exactly like the water building up behind a giant hydroelectric dam. And the only way back for those protons is through this absolutely unbelievable molecular machine, ATP synthase. As the protons come rushing through, they force a part of it to spin at insane speeds. We're talking maybe 8,000 RPM. This spinning action turns a central stalk, and that forces another part of the machine to literally smash a molecule of ADP and a phosphate together, forging our energy currency, ATP. It's a real, working biological motor. It's just incredible. Now, the big, fancy scientific name for this whole shebang is oxidative phosphorylation. It sounds really intimidating, I know, but it's actually perfectly descriptive. It's oxidative because the whole process depends on oxygen being there at the end to accept those electrons. And it's phosphorylation because the end goal is to add a phosphate group to phosphorylate ADP to make ATP. See? Not so scary when you break it down. So let's just run through it all one last time. It kicks off with fuel molecules delivering high-energy electrons. Those electrons race down the chain, and their energy is used to pump a river of protons across a membrane, creating this powerful gradient. Oxygen is waiting at the very end to clean everything up. And finally, that river of protons flows back through the ATP synthase turbine, generating just massive amounts of the ATP that powers pretty much everything you do. And that leaves us with one final and pretty critical thought. This entire beautiful energy-producing factory is completely dependent on that one last step, handing off the electron to oxygen. So it really makes you wonder, what happens to the whole system? What happens to us if that oxygen just isn't there? It's a thought that really drives home how this tiny, microscopic process is, quite literally, a matter of life and death.